put anything to their mouth, so and suppose a button is there or certain items, plastic items are there. So if it is broken, so that broken parts become a choking hazards. I will come little bit of more details about it. And swallowing of the hazardous substances. And what happens, the whatever is there in the mouth, if that contains some hazardous substances like a phthalate, so or the lead, so it goes into the body of the children. Now what is the after effect of it? Let us see. In the next slide we'll see. Now, very interesting part, another part we want to just touch here. There are huge number of regulations associated with that, that ISO regulations are there. Now, the BIS recently is forming some, in the process of forming lot of regulations on this children's item. I am one of the panel member of BIS now. So, so a lot of things are getting discussed in the Indian context also. Previously, there was no Indian standard. So Bureau of Indian Standard developing the Indian standard now, but European standard, whatever is there, or US standards. So based on those kind of things, we address the safety issues in the children's garment. As you can see from this drawstrings, we normally call it as a drawstrings. So cords, toggles, and the hoods. Okay, so very risk area this is. And as you can see the how the strangulation hazards can takes place with a knot or the toggle, and it can easily caught, for example, the playing ground and all these things, and leads to the injury or the death. And there are certain regulations, of course, head, neck, and upper chest area, that age group between 7 to 14. Okay, if drawstrings are used, that should not have the free ends. If free ends, it is non-compliance. So product safety or product review will be done. So it gets the non-compliance mark. Similarly, functional and decorative cords, it should not be not longer than the 7.5 centimeter. Okay, so these are the regulations associated with that. If it exceeds that, then it is a non-compliant material. So design part of the garment, when fabrication of a particular garment, it is very important. So those kind of things actually we have to take into account, and that's why it should not have the buttons, toggles, or buckle on the free end. That is also another thing, and otherwise it will cause the entrapment hazards, because one area it is holding, and another area it is as we can see the playground, that picture. And these are one of the things happened in US also, this kind of cords and drawstrings related issues. So based on that, the CPI SIA, they form the regulations into that. Now coming into these long cords with knots and toggles. Now clothing, children's clothing especially, with cords or drawstrings which are too long at the back, the waist, or the sleeve or lower hems of the garment. So it carries the risk of getting caught. For example, in the door of moving vehicles, and the child is getting dragged along, resulting in injury or death. So these are the things happened, and these are the based on that CPSIA or ISO, they are working on this regulation. Okay, so this is a potential danger for the children's garment, and that's why the potential designer who is preparing the or the fabrication of the particular clothing, one has to know the regulations. That's why very important for a merchandiser to understand this also. Okay, so the regulation, latest regulations, they must be aware of that. Okay, now next point comes in safety issues in the children's garment is the small parts. Okay, now how the small part is getting created, that is the question. You see, small parts, first of all, they cause the choking hazards. Okay, if they come out during use, and child put them in the mouth, or if that particular small part or the button, it creates the small part, it is broken. Okay, so that becomes a small part, and examples are plenty, as you can see from these figures, that snaps, buttons, zipper components, applique, patches, rhinestones, beads, sequins, decorations, embellishment, bows. So all these things will be treated as small parts. Okay, and how to identify their small parts, that is also another very important area to understand. So we have understood from here that which are the items which are used in the garment can become a small part. Now, you can see now the small parts when you are telling. So, what is how to define the small part? That is the best way to represent. Now, there is a particular test cylinder is there for that. Okay, and this cylinder has been designed as per the throat, a human throat kind of thing. So, it is designed as per that. So any kind of testing issues which are there in this industry, these are all kind of examples of the real life situation. It has been formulated, and then the testing has been developed onto that. So this is all real life situations. That's why throat size and the cylinder size, that should match exactly. Then only it will become a standard. So here the 2.25-inch long, 1.25 inches wide, that will be the fully expanded throat of a child under 3 years old. So any kind of small part, if you want to test it, you have to put it into the cylinder. If it passes through, then it is a small part. If it doesn't passes through, then it is safe product. So that is why in the industry, the small parts are getting judged by experimenting through this test cylinder. Now, a lot of digitalization of this small part equipment has been happened, but this is the base of that. The theory behind this, how a particular item can become a small part. Now, another very interesting point of any kind of product is that sharp points and sharp edges. There are regulations for that, like Code of Federal Regulations are there. 16 CFR 1500.48. This is regulated by sharp points, how the testing should be carried out, or the sharp edges like 16 CFR 1500.49. And why these sharp points are important here? Because these sharp points or edges can puncture, poke, or injure a child. Okay, like a safety pin. So, which is used to attach a bows or decorative items to the center front neck, and it can puncture the larynx, resulting in breathing difficulty and possible permanent damage of voice cord from where the voice comes. So larynx talks about the voice or our swelling behavior, or we are taking food that is getting control from that part of the body. And sharp edges on metal hardware can cause the lacerations. It is a very deep cut, that is called laceration. So deep cut if it happens due to the sharp edges. So both are regulated by Code of Federal Regulations of US, and there are particular standards available to test those items. And normally the sharp point and sharp edges, when you are talking, it can come from the toys or many other children's items what children are normally using between the 0 to 3 years of age. So those kind of sharp point and sharp edges, that's why are very important. So what we have talked here so far, we talked about the physical aspects of the safety issues. So when a product is getting reviewed by a merchandiser, or the risk assessment when it is getting done, so all these items, all these areas needs to be checked first. Okay, and then only the design of the garment should be approved, and after that only real production will start. Now next comes the chemical aspects or chemical safety of a children's products. If we see, so what are the cause of concern into this children's product? Number one is the banned amine. Okay, and as everybody knows that azo dye is actually, they are the base of all coloring components in this dyeing industry. So around 70% of our dyes available in the industry are azo dyes contain N double bond N group. Okay, but not all azo dyes are banned. Only those azo dyes which releases the amines, okay, that is aromatic amines, which are carcinogenic in nature, cancer causing, and such dyes releases those amines which are banned from usage in textile and leather production. So one has to be very careful when talking about the children's product. And there are different standards available, as we have noticed here. The banned amines can be tested in the ISO method. There are GB standards, that is China national standards are also available. Guavio standards we call it as. So there also the products are getting tested by banned amines and all other products. So this banned amines is a very risk involved restricted substances which are to be carefully judged or carefully tested because these banned amine also, the clear conception should be there. There are 22 banned amines are banned in that, and as per GB standard there are 24. So one has to be very careful while controlling these banned amines. Now very interesting point also is there. Many people they don't know about this, that banned amines we are having some conception that it can only come from the dyes. It is not. It can come from a finishing chemicals also, or a dye which is not harmful, that may cause also the banned amines kind of thing, the releasing of amines, which shows that it is within this 22 categories of banned amines. So we have to be very careful because the machine or the instrument where it is getting tested, that is very very important, like the GCMS. Okay, so if the temperature is very high, then the product actually will, there will be hydrolytic cleavage of the product, and that dye stuff, when there is hydrolytic cleavage due to the instrument, then also it can create this band amines, but that is not at all a band amines. So false positive result, this is very very interesting. Many finishing chemicals sometimes gives this false positive results in the final testing or final product testing. So that is very interesting to share with you. Now we'll talk about the second product, that is the second most important risky chemicals we can say, that is called APEO, alkyl phenyl ethoxylate. Okay, and these chemicals you will find in many areas in textile applications, like washing agents. It is available in the emulsifying agent, softener. So many products actually, even what we use as a detergent in our house, that also contains APO. Okay, and why this is dangerous or it is harmful? Because there is some biodegradability, and biodegrade to form specific metabolites which do not biodegrade further, and they are becoming persistent to the environment. So any kind of washing chemicals, it is, we have to be very very careful. It should not contain alkyl phenol ethoxylates. Okay, because why it is important? Because if it happens to be found in the clothing, it becomes a endocrine disruptor. That is, it is mimicking the hormone in the body, and normal body functioning is getting affected because of this APO. That's why it is very very dangerous chemical in this restricted substances in the product, especially in the children product. One has to be very very carefully handle this kind of thing. Okay, so APO is most important restricted substances which can be tested in product. Now another very interesting point of restricted substances which are often found in the children's garment, that is called the heavy metals. Now, what are the heavy metals available in the children's products? Now, children's products, there are heavy metals which can be found. That is the lead, cadmium, then nickel. So those are all found in the children's garment. in the form of metallic buttons, okay, in the form of dyes also. Some dyes, they contain the lead and cadmium also, okay. Auxiliaries it may contain, okay. Trims and accessories, many trims and accessories are used which contain the heavy metals. That's why while formulating the regulations like Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act, CPSIA of US, they were very particular about this. There are two aspects. Suppose a particular button, metallic button or metallic component, there are two aspects of it. Now, CPSIA, as per that regulation, 90 ppm is the limit for the surface coating. Surface coating sometimes contains the lead. And second one is that total lead content in the material itself, that is 100 ppm. They have fixed these two regulations. Now, BIS, what the standard now they are developing, I suggested them make it 90 ppm for both. So universally it can be accepted. 90 ppm is a very stringent limit. Let that limit be applied in the total lead content in the particular metal components of the trims also. So maybe in the Indian context that BIS will develop that one in future as per our recommendations. So these are the heavy metals. Then nickel also is another part. Nickel also found in many coatings, okay, the surface coatings and all these things of buttons. So nickels are also available into that. Now another important point is that in the when you are talking about garments, that is the phthalate. Phthalate is essential. You see that like in a plastisol prints, okay, plastisol prints, phthalate is a must actually. It should be available. Otherwise, print will not get the flexibility or durability. That's why this always people prefer the phthalates in the prints because of that effect. But what is the problem now? Problem is that this phthalate, if anybody uses as a print, as a kind of printing ink or printing material, then it can cause cancer. It is again an endocrine disruptor and toxic for reproduction. So these are the harmful effects of phthalates, and common source that t-shirts printed with plastisols, sports shoes, synthetic leather, carpets backed with PVC, flexible zippers in garment. These are not only for the children's garment but also for the adult garments. This phthalate is very, very essential. And now question comes that what is the limit then? Now, previously people thought there are 5 phthalates are there, 5 or 6 phthalates were there. So that altogether that 1000 ppm is the limit for that. It should not exceed 1000 ppm. But later on, when this REACH regulation came into the picture, REACH is European regulations. There they have added few more phthalates. So now at present maybe around 14 phthalates are there. So those kind of phthalates altogether should not exceed 1000 ppm, that limit. So it is a very, very dangerous chemical. That's why people give lot of importance, and lot of printing recipes are making reformulated. That is the kind of replacement of the phthalates. Okay, try to replace those kind of things. It is essential because of the human health and safety issues. That is very, very important. Okay. Now, next important part of this chemical safety is the organotin compounds. Now, what are those organic tin compounds? In textiles, especially, organotin compounds are used in many areas, and this compound is an antimicrobial finishing agent. It is a heat stabilizer, PVC and PU, and during cotton cultivation, biocides. As a biocides, these organotin compounds are used. Now, what is the harmful aspects of it? It is bioaccumulative, toxic to marine life, and endocrine disruptor. So, if it comes to the environment, it will multiply itself. Okay, and of course, the marine life is water is getting polluted. Then the marine life is getting polluted, and above all, it is an endocrine disruptor. Okay, So it has a direct effect on the hormonal imbalance. So that's why organotin compounds, we have to be very, very careful. It should not be present in the product. So that's why whenever we are giving any kind of finishing treatment, or you are talking about the supply chain or producing a product, we have to be very careful that these type of products should not be available in the finished goods. Now, it is a very interesting to note now is that a lot of finishes nowadays have come, textile finishing. So we are talking about the dyeing and other areas, but now in the finishing area, if you comes, one very simple way of giving the finishes, oil, water, resistant finishes or stain repellent properties. So one alternative was there only the PFCs, that is perfluorooctane sulfonic acid, PFOS, or octaconic acid, PFOA. Now, harmful nature, it gives very good finish, but harmful nature of this is that it is very persistent, very bioaccumulative, or PBBB, and extremely toxic to mammals and aquatic life, and even at a very low concentration. That's why the use of this compound, that is PFCs, are banned, and people are now finding lot of alternatives to it. Okay, so this compound should not be present in the children's garment at all. This kind of finishing agents, if it is available, then that export of the items will be totally banned, because it is also restricted through REACH regulation. Any kind of regulations, this is now restricted. Okay, people are now working on the safe alternatives or the positive chemical list for that, giving such kind of functional finishes. Now, there is in certain cases, people uses the polyester fabrics. They use the allergenic dispersed dye sometimes. Okay, especially the dispersed blue 6. So it has having very bad effect on the human health. Okay, because it is allergenic in nature. Dispersed dyes, okay, it should not be used. It is banned. Manufacturing of such dyes are banned. But in the local market, still such kind of colors are available. Trims and accessories, polyester buttons, zipper fabric, colored beads, sequins, sewing threads. So they are also dyed with kind of dispersed blue 6 kind of dye stuffs. But it is banned because allergenic dispersed dye. This coming under the allergenic dispersed dye category. So let's move on to the next phase of this one, restricted substances, that is called formaldehyde. Now, formaldehyde, we cannot live without formaldehyde, because any kind of finishing you want to give to get some functional effect, anti-creasing, anti-shrinking, so there resin finishing is a must, like a DMDHEU, one of the resins. It contains the formaldehyde. Okay, but we cannot avoid, because it is used as an adhesive in the prints, binder, as a pigment print, tanning in the leather processing. So formaldehyde cannot be avoided. Even the room where we are taking our breathing and all these things, it might contain 5 ppm of formaldehyde. That's why rules and regulation is very strict under Ocotec standard and also in the GB standard. Okay, and especially for the baby clothing, they don't allow more than 20 ppm this formaldehyde limit for that purpose. So it is a very it must be strictly controlled, the formaldehyde, that otherwise it has a harmful effect, like it is a carcinogenic effect, respiratory tract problems, skin sensitizer, and skin related diseases all happened due to formaldehyde. So that's why it is a banned chemical again, and we have to see the alternatives. Now, so far we have talked about the physical safety and the chemical safety of a children's apparel. But now there is another very important thing that children's apparel must fulfill, is the flammability requirement. Okay, and when you are talking about the flammability requirement, there are two aspects of it. Number one, it should pass 16 CFR part 1610 general wearing apparel flammability, that is the 45-degree flammability, and it also should pass 16 CFR part 1615 and 1616 depending upon the age group, 0 to 6 or 7 to 14. So these are the code of federal regulations. Any children's garment should pass these tests. Then only that can be exported or accepted by the buyer. So flammability is a no tolerance issue is there into that. It is a critical defects kind of thing or critical point of concern. You can call it as a particular product. I have seen many products which has passed the physical tests, which has passed the chemical test, but it failed in the flammability test. So it is very, very important. That's why when designing the garment, one has to be very careful that what type of product they are going to use in that material. And flammability plays an important role. That's why in the children garment. Now, coming into this flammability, there are very interesting points I wish to share also with you. That it is the design of the garment. The what type of garment is coming under this category? Children's sleepwear, night gowns, pajamas, as we can see from the figure, or similar related items like robes intended to be worn primarily for sleeping activities. To like in, but this kind of things is not only for sleeping activity but different other activities also children's they use all this. Okay, so these kind of things are very strictly regulated under 1615 and 1616. They see the designs of the garment. Okay, so based on that, the testing is getting decided whether it is coming under this category or not. Now, exception is there for the diapers and the underwear. So, children's diapers and underwear are not coming under this flammability regulations. So, these are some of the important points of the particular standards of children's flammability. Now, we are talking about different styles or different garments kind of thing. Now, typical styles, you can see that, which is considered by Consumer Product Safety Commission of US. So these are the different styles which have been shown here, and which are treated as a children's sleepwear and which are prone to testing. And it should pass this both 1610, 1615 or 1616 because this is covered under CPSC children's sleepwear category. And at the right hand side, you can see that items which are exempted from this. Okay, like I already told, baby diapers and other items which are not coming under this category. So design of the garment and the end use also is very important to decide whether the particular garment is covering under the flammability regulations or not. So one has to really understand the particular style of this garment in order to decide whether this is coming under children's sleepwear category or not. Many times people get the exception from the buyer. Yes, it is not under this category. So this testing is not required. But overall, yes, it is required. Any kind of children's item on the safer side must be tested with this 1615 and 1616 and 1610 of this CFR regulation. Now, general wearing apparels, when I was talking, any costume or article of clothing worn or intended to be worn by individuals excludes the footwear. So this is not available. Footwear testing is not there in this flammability, but the snug fitting garments, as we can see here, must be tested for 16 CFR part 1610 and does not exceed the maximum dimensions specified in the standard. It is very, very important that snug fitting garment for children's must be tested for 1610. Long underwear garments not intended as sleepwear must be tested according to 16 CFR part 1610. So these are the regulation one has to understand. A designer of a garment, now he has to know or a person who is doing the inspection of a garment for order safety or risk assessment, one has to know, this knowledge is very, very important, that what type of garment, the styling of the garment is very, very important, whether this flammability regulation is applied in this particular category of garment or not. So that talks about the flammability aspects of it. Now, we'll talk a little bit about, very quickly, about some of the restricted substances in the fashion textiles in general, because our apparel industry uses 43 million tons of chemicals every year. So nature of the chemicals is very important. So I will quickly go through this, and that's why buyers, they restricted all these things, and preparing some restricted substances list, RSL we call it as, and they are monitored, and monitored very strictly, especially for the end product or the finished product of the garment. Okay, RSL is not monitored in the process. Okay, once everything is completed, that is covering, bleaching, dyeing, finishing, everything is completed, then only at the final stage, the garment finishing stage, the GPT test, this is getting monitored actually. So finished garments should be always like that. It should not contain the RSL, that is the substances which are prescribed in the restricted substances. That's why the restricted substances list understanding is very important. Different buyer is having different kind of list available with them. But one thing is common, is that these restricted substances are regulated by the global legislations. Okay, or this is also controlled by the legislation of that particular country. So this, any substance cannot come under the restricted substances. Okay, so restricted substances, coming into the restricted substances is important, because this is regulated by the global regulations. Global regulations of US is different, Europe is different, Korea is different, Taiwan is different, Japan is, it is different. So different countries, they are having different kind of legislations. And second point, it comes from the eco level criteria, different eco levels, as we'll see later, that what are the eco levels criteria has to be fulfilled. And third one is very important, is the NGO concerns. Like sometimes the different NGOs are operating in this industry. So what they do, they want to pick up some samples from reputed buyers, and they do separate testings and publish those results. So NGO concerns is very, very important. So we cannot get rid of those NGOs interventions in this field. So that's why a buyer, when they decide any kind of restricted substances list, they take all these three into consideration. Now, question comes, why these substances are restricted? These are restricted due to health issues, environmental issues, or the regulations and legislations. So these are the different areas needs to be considered when a substance is getting, any global regulations is getting formed. They take care of all these health, environment, and regulations of that particular country. And human health, already we have seen that products which we discussed, like APEO, we discussed about organotin compound. Some of the products I didn't discuss also, like it is used like a chlorobenzene. Okay, it is used in the polyester dyeing as a carrier. So many such products are there, but which are really cause of concern, those kind of things only I have taken into consideration. And these particular substances are in general carcinogenic in nature, mutagenic in nature, or toxic to reproduction. So CMR. And substances can act as endocrine disruptor also. These are allergenic or skin sensitizer also. So one has to be very, very careful while processing the children's garment, because such kind of products we cannot produce into this, which can cause human health and environmental issues. Now, coming back to the environment, why these substances are harmful to the environment? Because once they enter into the environment, how they enter into the environment, how they become persistent. You see, suppose we are wearing a t-shirt with the plastisol prints. which contains phthalate. Now this after the several uses, we just throw it out in the landfill, and it will not go as such. So it is cannot be biodegradable, as I already mentioned, phthalate. So it becomes persistent to the environment. It becomes to the part of the soil. Okay, so it becomes persistent to the environment. It is bioaccumulative. It goes to the atmosphere and multiply itself, and toxic to aquatic organisms. Even in the marine culture is getting affected because of this. So those kind of products, that's why, are become restricted because of that reason. Now, coming into the part of this regulation and legislations. So several substances are regulated, like most important part of these regulatory aspects now come from the REACH regulation. One must understand that around 214 such products are available as of date, that which are banned by these REACH regulations, and people all over the world now uses. There are a lot of regulation associated with Ocotex. There are regulation associated with GOT standard, OCA standard, etc. But main problem, actually main substances which are controlled by European regulation, that is one of the most important standard in this category. And criteria of a substance, how it is getting, as I already told, that legislations, REACH regulation, registration, evaluation, authorization and restriction of chemicals, that is regulated by Europe, and Toxic Substances Control Act in US. So that is also coming under this legislation. So legislation is very, very important in this. Second one is important when a substances is entering is the toxicological studies, that is aquatic toxicity. Okay, or how it has effect on the human being. So those kind of studies are called the toxicological studies, how much toxic is to the environment or the human health. So those are taken into account in this category. Now, third important aspects I was telling about the eco labels. Eco labels talks about aquatic standard. There are special standards that are available for the baby garment, that is the class 1 standards. Then that organic standard, that is the GOT standard. Global Organic Textile Standard is available. OCA standard is also available. Organic Content Standards is available. They are having their different regulation to classify the garments. So eco level is also another of them. So they also categorize different items, that this will be banned in my product. If it is Ocotex certificate, Ocotex certification required, then this product should not be available in your product. If it is GOTS, this particular substances should not be. If it is available also, within this limit, this is available. So those are the regulations are driven by these eco levels. So these are important to bring a substances under this RSL list. So, and fourth one is very, very important, is the precautionary measures. Okay, we know that there is potential danger for human health or environment. So even if somebody suspects that yes, this has some environmental impact or the health impact, so precautionary principles must be taken into account, and we have to avoid such products. Because I already told while starting this presentation that this presentation is valid for today. It may not be valid for after 6 months, because it is very dynamic in nature. Rules and regulation is getting changed or upgraded every day. So we have to be very carefully monitor such kind of thing. So that we are talking about the restricted substances. Okay, what are the restricted substances and the impact of our different garments. Now, there are certain limitations also, because when you are talking about the restricted substances, we don't talk about the wastewater, air, and sludge. Okay, our focus is on end product only. So that is the limitation of RSLs. Now, buyer understood this fact, and that's why they have come with a new concept. That's why. Okay, that is called the manufacturing restricted substances list. I'm not covering in detail that one. Now, let me tell a little bit about one important part of this different studies or different your testing criterias. Like one is very important, that the detection limit. Okay, suppose a lab can detect APO 10 ppm, and detection limit of APO is 10 ppm, there is no problem as such. Problem comes when it differs. Okay. Now, laboratory has to report above 30 ppm. Okay. But restricted reporting limit of APO is 30 ppm, and lab has to report above 30 ppm. Okay. But if it by chance is this limit is less, then it is a problem for the lab. Okay. So lab cannot detect some 10 ppm in that product because their instrument is not capable enough to detect that. So one has to be very carefully scrutinize the lab also. Okay, because APO in a finished garment, suppose is 20 ppm, laboratory will detect 30 ppm. Laboratory will detect not detected, because this is wrong. Because laboratories equipment is starting from 30 ppm onwards, and if APO is there in the finished garment 20 ppm, so laboratory cannot detect. They will give not detected, but actually it is present in the garment. So this is the tricks behind choosing a particular instrument, and one has to carefully tackle this situation when anybody wants to do certain testing into this. So this is an important example just I want to put forward, because a lot of confusions are created during the testing, and many times what happens, one particular testing result is getting challenged and it is tested in some other lab, it got failed. Suppose in one garment is failed, and in one of the labs other garment it passes. Okay, but why? So those kind of things actually we tried to investigate, and we found that these are the point to be noticed by a particular buyer or particular person who is conducting the testing into this. So talking about the risk areas of a particular industry, like in garment industry, risk areas are everywhere: dye houses, garment washing units, printing units, leather processing units. So those are the major risk areas where these chemicals are getting used. Okay. So that's why I was talking about that MRSL, manufacturing restricted substances list. So this is an example, the raw materials and chemicals which are available. So that chemical is tested in the end product as RSL, but this product will be tested in the manufacturing stage itself in different processes, but that will be MRSL. So buyer is having two types of list nowadays. One is the RSL list and another is the MRSL list. Okay, but of course, if MRSL is getting controlled, there is very less chance of getting any kind of restricted substances in the end product, until and unless there is some false positive or such kind of results where the reaction mechanism changes, as I told. So otherwise the MRSL is more convenient one to follow for these different garment units. Now, common physical tests, I just want to cover you, give a, not covering in details. There are common physical tests available in any kind of laboratories, like starting from the GSM, then count of the threads, then peeling resistance, abrasion resistance, tensile strength, tearing strength. So all these things are getting measured in the under the common physical tests. Those are also important, and many of the cases, many buyers are recommending some local labs also for this common physical tests to conduct in their own laboratories which are associated with that garment factories. Of course, this is not applicable for any kind of chemical testing. Okay, normally lab buyer, they do not approve such kind of testing in the local or in-house laboratory. So that must be tested in the third party laboratory, not in the first party or second party laboratories. Okay, so that is the way it is getting controlled. Now there are many such kind of tests available, like a color fuzzies to wash is very important, and a lot of importance is given to you, and give it to the consumers. And why it is important? Because it is an indirect indication when a particular dye there is a bleeding, either through crocking or rubbing or through washing. It, if it comes out easily, then that means that dye is not fixed properly into those product, and there is every chance that dye can come as a kind of banned amine category. It is an indirect indication sometimes it gives that aromatic amine contains dyestuffs are not fixed properly, and it is there on the surface of the product. Many times it happens like that, especially when we dye very high depth of shades. This is a very frequent kind of thing is available, or the dazzling kind of shades or a very lustrous shades. So those kind of possibilities of getting the banned amines are more. So that's why color fastness testing is very, very important to get an indication whether the color has been used correctly or not. So that is called the color fastness test that we carry out. Now, last part of this one is the product testing, that is analytical tests. What we are talking about, this testing of banned amines, testing of phthalates, testing of organotin compounds, testing of PCPs, PFCs, all these things. When this testing is done, analytical instruments are used, normally LCMS, GCMS, or atomic absorption spectra. It is used for the heavy metals, right side of it. So those kind of analytical tests are to be carried out, and it is very costly also. This kind of products are very costly products and costly testing. So that's why the test cost increases because of this analytical tests or the chemical tests. But this is essential for getting this cleared through these regulations of a particular country, like a REACH regulation or OCOTEX or GOTS. So one has to do this mandatory testing as an analytical tests, and that's why the product cost increases because of such kind of increase of cost due to analytical testing. So these are the some of the areas actually I try to give you some sort of indications about this. So I will now hand over the session to Mr. Sudarshan. If any questions or any doubt is there, please ask me also.
Thank you, sir, for valuable information. The participants is going to get a lot of insights on the restricted substances, the testings to be carried out. So I thank you for your valuable inputs. So participants, if any questions or any concerns, you can ask. Anybody has any doubts? Yes, any participants?
No, sir. Only one question which is related to color bleeding. So normally we are following some standards as per ISO. So if color is bleeding in dark substances, then it is not at all acceptable, or as per ISO rating, if it is bleeding, then it is acceptable.
Yes, sir.
Now, what happens if a color bleeds from a product? It will fail in both the cases. Either is any kind of regulations, it will fail. If it is a kind of color fastness testing, so very little difference is there between the different color fastness tests between different countries or different methods. Little differences are there, but of course, the dark color, if it bleeds, it gives what I was trying to say, that it gives an indirect indications the dye stuff what has been used there, that needs to be screened properly. Okay, so normally it is getting fixed. Normal good dye stuffs and all these things are getting fixed properly. But if fixation is not proper, then every chance of dye is coming out from this, and it becomes a restricted substances or MRSL. You see what happens that when you wash this material after this dyeing, so that becomes that wash liquor, it goes to the environment. Okay, so that is again getting tested, and it adds to the different kind of COD level, and all these things is getting sludge, and all these things is getting generated. So this is against the MRSL. Even that, if it may contain also different banned amines or other substances also. That's why I told you it's an indirect indication. The dye stuff, we need to screen it properly.